there's no development, there's no peace. In fact, the underprivileged always agitate to have a little more. And so, although there may not be a fight, but there is lack of peace because there is always insecurity, there's always a lack of tranquility because of the feeling that one section of the community has everything when another section in the same community has absolutely nothing. And that disturbs peace. But of course, at Africa level, it takes a different concept because of the borders. We inherited boundaries, and we agreed at the African Union that these will be the basis for our nationality. But those boundaries cut across major tribal groups. And that in itself is a matter of conflict, because in Malawi we have tribes from Mozambique, we have tribes from Zambia, we have tribes from Tanzania, and every other country is the same thing. And how we look at peace is different because the countries across, maybe for instance under one colonial administration, it would be France, and then you have English, and then you have Portuguese. The way we've been structured to think is not the same, and that also gives a lot of problems. But I believe that there will be lasting peace on the African continent if there's development. And that development must embrace the issue of, for instance, safe motherhood, the issue of mortality, infant, child, and maternal mortality must be part of that package. That peace will be comprehensive if people are able to feed themselves. They don't have to go beg for food. That peace can be comprehensive if people have shelter, have medicine, have schools. So it's an all-embracing thing. And I was saying, for instance, how do you have peace-keeping forces, for instance, if you don't have food? So you see one subset of that already affecting. So I believe that we are beginning to look at peace in an all-embracing structure where it involves several other aspects, each one of them reinforcing upon one another. And I think that will be the concept in which I understand peace. It's not only that we don't shoot each other, but much more so at national level, do we have peace and tranquility? The issue of government and civil society organizations working together in order to achieve peace is extremely important. First of all, it's important that government and civil society understand the same way when they say peace and security. And I think we need a new form of dialogue, because you get these accusations, government is not doing enough for peace, and etc. etc. Perhaps these are all right, they're justified, but do we understand the same way? It's like democracy, for instance. What is democracy? Do we understand the same way? So the same way, peace. What is peace? And I would like to start this initiative in my own country. I'll be inviting the civil society organizations to let's sit down and understand what we mean by peace, both in terms of our own country, but also in terms of our relations with the neighbors, but at the same time at the continental level. And I think once we define what peace is, we are beginning to move in the same direction, because it's quite possible that we may not be defining peace in the same way. I'll give you an example. There were 3 blind men who went to see an elephant. One of them was at the tail and he was stroking the elephant's tail and said, an elephant is like a snake. The other one started arguing, said, you really are blind. And he was stroking the leaf of the elephant, the ear of the elephant. He says, no, an elephant is like a leaf. And the others started laughing at him. The third person was stroking the trunk, the leg of the elephant. The leg of the elephant. He says, no, an elephant is like the trunk of a tree. They were all defining an elephant, but they were also not defining an elephant. So I think we need to move in that direction so that we understand together. But I'm confident that the civil society organizations can contribute towards peace if their understanding of peace and the government is the same. My sympathies go to them, because many of them who are affected are women and children and elderly who have absolutely nothing to do with what's happening. But they are at the wrong end of the stick. And so they suffer. And as a result, you get refugees moving across the borders and, suffering. And I think that I would say to them that now that we are looking at a peace in a comprehensive way, perhaps we are on the way to finding what their real problem is. And I think that we have a sort of standardized or stereotyped approach to refugees or displaced persons, or they must be in the camps, in the tents, and that's about all. But we have never thought of integrating them in our society. And I remember some years back we had about 1 million refugees from Mozambique. And the late Archbishop of Canterbury, of the Anglican Church, came to Malawi to look at the camps. So he was traveling along there and he saw these houses, and they were not, he expected tents, but instead he saw villages and houses. So he went through and he said, but where are the refugees? He said, you are past them, your grace. And he came back and said, are these refugees? He said, yes, because in Malawi we decided not to put them in tents and camps. We simply gave them the opportunity to build their own houses, gave them plots of land, and they were cultivating. When the war in Mozambique finished, they simply crossed, left some of the structures to area. Some of them, of course, stayed there because they got married. Perhaps that's an African way of looking at refugees. So I would say that we need to look at, for those, across within the regions, we need to look at their plight in a human way as just part of us, but just they are unfortunate that at that point in time, they happen to be in an area where you have conflict. That's the way I look at it. Perhaps that is a puristic, approach, but maybe that's an approach we need to look at.
MBC, inspiring the nation.
Dive into the clear waters of Lake Malawi. Put a snorkel